The Christian Worldview of Empathy by Maggie Campbell Martin. The New Testament is full of stories and scriptures about empathy, even though the actual word is not used. In fact, the underlying belief of Christianity is empathy. For example, the Apostle Paul tells us to have compassion for one another, love as brothers, be tender-hearted, be courteous. 1 Peter 3:8. In Romans 12:15, Paul encourages empathy by saying, "Rejoice with those who rejoice, mourn with those who mourn." Notice he is telling us to do something, not to just feel something. This is the difference between empathy, the action, and sympathy, having a feeling. Jesus, of course, has many examples of empathy. Matthew says when he, Jesus, saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Matthew 9:36. When Jesus heard of the death of his dear friend Lazarus, the Bible tells us Jesus wept, and when he saw the pain and hurt of Lazarus' mother, Jesus' heart overflowed with compassion. Because Jesus was God born to flesh, he can empathize with all of our emotions. The Apostle John said, "If anyone has material possessions and sees a brother or sister in need, but has no pity on them, how can the love of God be in that person?" 1 John 3:17. Notice John is telling us to have an action, have pity. As Christians, we know we're to love one another, which we can do rather easily, but what actions are we taking to relieve any negative feelings such as pain? If we cannot help relieve someone of their pain, are we being empathetic? I learned there are different types of empathy, cognitive and affective. Cognitive empathy refers to the empathy we learn as we develop and grow. It's more biological. The mere effect of babies, where they will imitate their caregivers' facial expressions, is an example of this. This is because neuroscientists found that canonical neurons have a direct link between perception and action. Affective empathy is a learned behavior. The more a child is exposed to empathetic caregivers and situations, the more empathy they will have for other people. The good news for everyone is that empathy can be learned and built stronger in us. 1, by reading the Bible and watching Jesus, Paul, John, and many others being empathetic. 2, as we focus on the needs of others and we interact and do for them, our sense of empathy grows. For me, I have always had a lot of empathy. I'm the person who cries at movies more than my friends, for instance. I have learned in this class that being overly empathetic can lead to burnout. There are times when I am so empathetic, I am internalizing someone else's pain. This not only exhausts me emotionally, but is not something I should carry, because it does not allow God to do His work for the person. Empathy is what Christians are taught to have for each other. It bonds us together as humans, and it drives us to help those that need help, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. We are now finding out that people who act without empathy, psychopaths for example, is not because they don't have the capacity to be empathetic, it's because they chose not to be empathetic. This is a very interesting finding. This may mean we will be able to learn to teach empathy in a manner that could potentially save lives. This leads us to what Peter asks us to do, and as all Christians should ultimately aspire to do. All of you be of one mind. 1 Peter 3:8. Peter believes oneness is a combination of love, compassion, tenderness, and courtesy. These 4 qualities are the heart of empathy.